The Copts are an ethno-religious group situated in North Africa and the Middle East, mainly in the area of modern Egypt, where they are the largest Christian denomination. They are also the largest Christian denomination in Sudan and Libya. Christianity was the religion of the vast majority of Egyptians from 400 to 800 AD, and the majority after the Muslim conquest until the mid-10th century, and remains the faith of a significant minority population. Historically they spoke the Coptic language, a direct descendant of the Demotic Egyptian spoken in the Roman era, but it has been near extinct and mostly limited to liturgical use since the 18th century. They now speak Arabic. Copts in Egypt constitute the largest Christian community in the Middle East, as well as the largest ethno-religious minority in the region, accounting for an estimated 10% of the Egyptian population. Copts in Sudan constitute the largest Christian community in Sudan, accounting for an estimated 1% of the Sudanese population. Copts in Libya constitute the largest Christian community in Libya, accounting for an estimated 1% of the Libyan population. Most Copts adhere to the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria. The Coptic Catholic Church, which is an Eastern Catholic Church in full communion with the Catholic Church, claims 163,000 members. Name: the word Copt was adopted in English in the 17th century, from New Latin Coptus, Coftis, which is derived from Arabic collective Qubt, Qibt, the Copts, with Nisba adjective Qubtai, plural Akbat, also Kafdi. Kifti, an Arabization of the Coptic word Qatar or Coptian. The Coptic word is in turn an adaptation of the Greek alpha, gamma, upsilon, pi, tau, iota, omicron, sigma, Egyptios, Egyptian, ultimately related to Kaftor. The term is thus ultimately derived from the Greek designation of the native Egyptian population in Roman Egypt. After the Muslim conquest of Egypt, it became restricted to those Egyptians adhering to the Christian religion. The Greek term for Egypt, alpha, gamma, upsilon, pi, tau, omicron, sigma, is itself derived from the Egyptian language, but dates to a much earlier period, being attested already in Mycenaean Greek as A3 pi t jo. This Mycenaean form is likely from Middle Egyptian hwtk3 pth, literally, a state of the spirit of Ptah. The name of the temple complex of the god Ptah at Memphis. In their own Coptic language, the Copts refer to themselves as Remenkema, Lemenkemi, Remenkemi, which literally means people of Egypt, or Egyptians, cf. Egyptian RMTNKMT, Demotic RMTNKMI. The Arabic word Qibt, Copt, has also been connected to the Greek name of the town of Kappa, Omicron Pi Tau Omicron Sigma Coptos. It is possible that this association has contributed to making Copt the settled form of the name. In the 20th century, some Egyptian nationalists and intellectuals in the context of Pharaonism began using the term Qebt in the historical sense. History: the Copts are one of the oldest Christian communities in the Middle East. Although integrated in the larger Egyptian nation-state, the ethnic Copts have survived as a distinct religious community, forming around 10 to 20% of the population, though estimates vary. They pride themselves on the apostolicity of the Egyptian Church, whose founder was the first in an unbroken chain of patriarchs. The main body for 16 centuries has been out of communion with both the Roman Catholic Church and the various Eastern Orthodox churches. Foundation of the Christian Church in Egypt. According to ancient tradition, Christianity was introduced within present-day Egypt by Saint Mark in Alexandria, shortly after the ascension of Christ and during the reign of the Roman Emperor Claudius around 42 AD. The legacy that Saint Mark left in Egypt was a considerable Christian community in Alexandria. From Alexandria, Christianity spread throughout Egypt within half a century of St. Mark's arrival in Alexandria, as is clear from a fragment of the Gospel of John, written in Coptic, which was found in Upper Egypt and can be dated to the first half of the 2nd century, and the New Testament writings found in Oxyrhynchus, in Middle Egypt, which date around the year 200 AD. In the 2nd century, Christianity began to spread to the rural areas, and scriptures were translated into the local language, today known as the Coptic language, but known as the Egyptian language at the time. By the beginning of the 3rd century AD, Christians constituted the majority of Egypt's population, and the Church of Alexandria was recognized as one of Christendom's 4 apostolic sees, second in honor only to the Church of Rome. The Church of Alexandria is therefore the oldest Christian church in Africa. Contributions to Christianity. The Copts in Egypt contributed immensely to Christian tradition. The Catechetical School of Alexandria was the oldest catechetical school in the world. Founded around 190 AD by the scholar Pantanius, the School of Alexandria became an important institution of religious learning, where students were taught by scholars such as Athenagoras, Clement, Didymus, and Origen, the father of theology, and who was also active in the field of commentary and comparative biblical studies. However, the scope of this school was not limited to theological subjects. Science, mathematics and humanities were also taught there. The question and answer method of commentary began there, and 15 centuries before Braille, wood carving techniques were in use there by blind scholars to read and write. Another major contribution made by the Copts in Egypt to Christianity was the creation and organization of monasticism. Worldwide Christian monasticism stems, either directly or indirectly, from the Egyptian example. The most prominent figures of the monastic movement were Antony the Great, Paul of Thebes, Macarius the Great, Shenouda the Archimandrite, and Pachomius the Cenobite. By the end of the 5th century, there were hundreds of monasteries, and thousands of cells and caves scattered throughout the Egyptian desert. Since then, pilgrims have visited the Egyptian desert fathers to emulate their spiritual, disciplined lives. Saint Basil, the great Archbishop of Caesarea Mysaca, and the founder and organizer of the monastic movement in Asia Minor, visited Egypt around 357 AD, and his monastic rules are followed by the Eastern Orthodox churches. Saint Jerome, who translated the Bible into Latin, came to Egypt while en route to Jerusalem around 400 AD and left details of his experiences in his letters. Saint Benedict founded the Benedictine order in the 6th century on the model of Saint Pachomius, although in a stricter form. Coptic Christians practice male circumcision as a rite of passage. The ecumenical councils, the major contributions that the See of Alexandria has contributed to the establishment of early Christian theology and dogma, are attested to by facts that the first 3 ecumenical councils in the history of Christianity were headed by Egyptian patriarchs. The Council of Nicaea was presided over by Saint Alexander, Patriarch of Alexandria, along with Saint Hosius of Cordoba. In addition, the most prominent figure of the council was the future Patriarch of Alexandria Athanasius, who played the major role in the formulation of the Nicene Creed, recited today in most Christian churches of different denominations. One of the council's decisions was to entrust the Patriarch of Alexandria with calculating and annually announcing the exact date of Easter to the rest of the Christian churches. The Council of Constantinople was presided over by Patriarch Timothy of Alexandria, while the Council of Ephesus was presided over by Cyril of Alexandria. Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD. Following the Council of Chalcedon, the Church of Alexandria was divided into 2 branches. Those who accepted the terms of the council became known as Chalcedonians or Melkites. Those who did not abide by the council's terms were labeled non-Chalcedonians or Monophysites and later Jacobites after Jacob Baradius. The non-Chalcedonians, however, rejected the term monophysites as erroneous and referred to themselves as Miaphysites. The majority of the Egyptians belonged to the Miaphysite branch, which led to their persecution by the Byzantines in Egypt. The Arab invasion of Egypt in 641 AD. Egypt was invaded by the Arabs, who faced off with the Byzantine army, but found little to no resistance from the native Egyptian population. Local resistance by the Egyptians, however, began to materialize shortly thereafter and would last until at least the 9th century. Copts in modern Egypt under Muslim rule. Christians were second-class citizens, who paid special taxes, had no access to political power, but were exempt from military service. The ethnic Copts were cut off from the mainstream of Christianity, but they were allowed to practice their religion unmolested. Their position improved dramatically under the rule of Muhammad Ali in the early 19th century. He abolished the jizya and allowed Egyptians to enroll in the army. Pope Cyril IV (1854–61) reformed the church and encouraged broader Coptic participation in Egyptian affairs. Khedive Ishmi Pasha, in power 1863–79, further promoted the Copts. He appointed them judges to Egyptian courts and awarded them political rights and representation in government. They flourished in business affairs. Some ethnic Copts participated in the Egyptian national movement for independence and occupied many influential positions. Two significant cultural achievements include the founding of the Coptic Museum in 1910 and the Higher Institute of Coptic Studies in 1954. Some prominent Coptic thinkers from this period are Salama Morsa, Louis Awad and Secretary-General of the WAFD party Makram Ebaid. In 1952, Gamal Abdel Nasser led some army officers in a coup d'état against King Farouk, which overthrew the Kingdom of Egypt and established a republic. Nasser's mainstream policy was pan-Arab nationalism and socialism. The ethnic Copts were severely affected by Nasser's nationalization policies, though they represented about 10 to 20% of the population. In addition, Nasser's pan-Arab policies undermined the Copts' strong attachment to and sense of identity about their Egyptian pre-Arab, and certainly non-Arab identity, which resulted in permits to construct churches to be delayed along with Christian religious courts to be closed. Pharaonism. Many Coptic intellectuals hold to Pharaonism, which states that Coptic culture is largely derived from pre-Christian, pharaonic culture, and is not indebted to Greece. It gives the Copts a claim to a deep heritage in Egyptian history and culture. Pharaonism was widely held by Coptic and Muslim scholars in the early 20th century, and it helped bridge the divide between those groups. Most scholars today see Pharaonism as a late development shaped primarily by Western Orientalism, and doubt its validity. Church affairs. Today, members of the non-Chalcedonian Coptic Orthodox Church constitute the majority of the Egyptian Christian population, mainly through emigration and partly through European, American, and other missionary work and conversions. The Egyptian Christian community now also includes other Christian denominations such as Protestants, Roman and Eastern Rite Catholics, and other Orthodox congregations. The term Coptic remains exclusive, however, to the Egyptian natives, as opposed to the Christians of non-Egyptian origins. Some Protestant churches, for instance, are called Coptic Evangelical Church, thus helping differentiate their native Egyptian congregations from churches attended by non-Egyptian immigrant communities such as Europeans or Americans. In 2005, a group of Coptic activists created a flag to represent Copts worldwide. The last head of the Coptic Orthodox Church, Pope Shenouda III of Alexandria, died 17 March 2012. On 4 November 2012, Bishop Tewodros was chosen as the new Pope of Egypt's Coptic Christians. His name was selected from a glass bowl containing the 3 shortlisted candidates by a blindfolded boy at a ceremony in Cairo's St. Mark's Cathedral. Copts in modern Sudan. Sudan has a native Coptic minority, although many Copts in Sudan are descended from more recent Egyptian immigrants. Copts in Sudan live mostly in northern cities, including Al Obeid, Atbara, Dongola, Khartoum, Omdurman, Port Sudan, and Wad Medani. They number up to 500,000, or slightly over 1% of the Sudanese population. Due to their advanced education, their role in the life of the country has been more significant than their numbers suggest. They have occasionally faced forced conversion to Islam, resulting in their emigration and decrease in number. Modern immigration of Copts to Sudan peaked in the early 19th century, and they generally received a tolerant welcome there. However, this was interrupted by a decade of persecution under Mahdist rule at the end of the 19th century. As a result of this persecution, many were forced to relinquish their faith, adopt Islam, and intermarry with the native Sudanese. The Anglo-Egyptian invasion in 1898 allowed Copts greater religious and economic freedom, and they extended their original roles as artisans and merchants into trading, banking, engineering, medicine, and the civil service. Proficiency in business and administration made them a privileged minority. However, the return of militant Islam in the mid-1960s and subsequent demands by radicals for an Islamic constitution prompted Copts to join in public opposition to religious rule. Ghaffar Namiri's introduction of Islamic Sharia law in 1983 began a new phase of oppressive treatment of Copts, among other non-Muslims. After the overthrow of Namiri, Coptic leaders supported a secular candidate in the 1986 elections. However, when the National Islamic Front overthrew the elected government of Sadiq al-Mahdi with the help of the military, discrimination against Copts returned in earnest. Hundreds of Copts were dismissed from the civil service and judiciary. In February 1991, a Coptic pilot working for Sudan Airways was executed for illegal possession of foreign currency. Before his execution, he had been offered amnesty and money if he converted to Islam, but he refused. Thousands attended his funeral, and the execution was taken as a warning by many Copts, who began to flee the country. Restrictions on the Copt rights to Sudanese nationality followed. The confiscation of Christian schools and the imposition of an Arab-Islamic emphasis in language and history teaching were accompanied by harassment of Christian children and the introduction of hijab dress laws. A Coptic child was flogged for failing to recite a Quranic verse. In contrast with the extensive media broadcasting of the Muslim Friday prayers, the radio ceased coverage of the Christian Sunday service. As the civil war raged throughout the 1990s, the government focused its religious fervor on the South. Although experiencing discrimination, the Copts and other long-established Christian groups in the North had fewer restrictions than other types of Christians in the South. Today, the Coptic Church in Sudan is officially registered with the government, and is exempt from property tax. In 2005, the Sudanese Government of National Unity named a Coptic Orthodox priest to a government position. Though the ruling Islamist party's continued dominance under the NU provides ample reason to doubt its commitment to broader religious or ethnic representation. Copts in modern Libya. The largest Christian group in Libya is the Coptic Orthodox Church, with a population of 60,000. The Coptic Church is known to have historical roots in Libya long before the Arabs advanced westward from Egypt into Libya. Demographics. Living in countries with Muslim majorities, the size of the population of Copts is a continuously disputed matter, frequently for reasons of religious jealousy and animosity. The ethnic Coptic population in Egypt is difficult to estimate, but some official estimates state that Coptic Christians represent from 5% to 10% or less of a population of over 83 million Egyptians, while other independent and Christian sources estimate much higher numbers, up to 23% of the population. The ethnic Coptic population in Sudan is at about 500,000 or 1% of Sudanese population. The ethnic Coptic population in Libya is about over 60,000 or 1% of Libyan population. Diaspora outside of the Coptic primary area of residence within parts of present-day Egypt, Sudan, and Libya. The largest ethnic Coptic diaspora population is located within the United States, Canada, and Australia. The numbers of the censuses in the United States, Canada, and Australia are not fully correct since many ethnic Copts listed themselves in the 2011 census mistakenly as either Egyptians, Sudanese, Libyans, Americans, Canadians or Australians, and by this way reducing the ethnic Coptic population in the 2011 census in the United States, Canada, and Australia respectively. Nevertheless, the ethnic Coptic American population is estimated to number about 200,000. The ethnic Coptic Canadian population is estimated to number about 50,000. The ethnic Coptic Australian population is estimated to number about 50,000. Smaller communities are found in Kuwait, the United Kingdom, France, South Africa. Minor communities below 10,000 people are reported from Jordan, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and elsewhere. It is noted that ethnic Copts also live in Lebanon, Denmark, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Russia, and Sweden.